questions, and at question number 1, I call Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the announcement by Aberdeen City Council that residents of approximately 500 homes in Torry face relocation as a result of reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete.
Cabinet Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I begin by, of course, recognising that this will be a very worrying time for those that are directly affected by the latest situation in Aberdeen. The rehoming programme confirmed last week is part of the Council's long-term plans to remediate RAAC discovered in their housing, and it is vital that the Council puts this proactive plan in place to provide one-to-one assessments and to make sure tenants find suitable onward accommodation. The Minister for Housing has met with council leaders and the housing convener to discuss the action taken and gain assurance that the needs of tenants will be foremost over the coming months. Through the RAAC cross-sector working group, we are continuing to engage with all local authorities.
Audrey Nicholl.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for her response. The Balnagask area of Torry is one of the most deprived areas on the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation. Around 150 homeowners in the area have purchased formal council properties. Many have mortgages still outstanding and will see a drop not just into negative but potentially zero equity. Insurance companies are already withdrawing cover, leaving residents in a very difficult financial predicament. Can the Cabinet Secretary outline what resources, advice and support homeowners can access in order to provide them with the information they require to inform how they proceed?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the affected buildings in Aberdeen have not been assessed as posing a critical risk requiring immediate evacuation, and therefore there are no plans at this stage to compel owners to leave their home. The long-term options available to these households will be considered as part of the Council's ongoing investigations and options appraisal for the site. We do understand individual decisions on each property are for the lender or insurer, but we will continue to engage with the Association of British Insurers and UK Finance to urge them to take a very responsible stance on this matter, which, as I said, they will hopefully appreciate that it is a worrying time for everyone involved.
Audrey Nicholl.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for outlining those options, and I'm pleased that Aberdeen City Council has set aside an initial £3 million to underpin their response to the issues arising from RAAC. However, for many of my constituents, the need to relocate their homes could incur unforeseen costs, such as new school uniforms for children, additional travel costs to work, or services such as GPs. Everyone, but especially families and children in this close-knit community, face huge upheaval. So given that many of those affected are on low incomes, can the Cabinet Secretary outline what additional support may be available to constituents faced with additional pressures on already tight family budgets?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, this is, of course, a matter for the Council, but I understand that the process of one-to-one assessments that Aberdeen City have planned will ensure that the circumstances of each individual family are considered and that wraparound support is provided, including consideration of the health and, importantly, the schooling needs of affected families. This will be underpinned by disturbance payments to cover rehoming costs, such as removals and new carpets, and other expenses, such as those mentioned by the member. And I appreciate her ongoing concern as the constituency MSP and will endeavour to keep her updated from a Scottish Government perspective. And I'm very aware that she is in communication with the Council as well, given that these are council buildings.
Liam Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. After years of underfunding, the Council will need financial help on what is a wholly devolved matter from the Scottish Government to assist the council tenants, the owners and the private renters that we've heard about. So what financial support will be made available from the Scottish Government to ensure the Council is able to provide the support needed?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, as the member will be aware, the Parliament has just very recently passed the budget, and I'm happy to be corrected, presiding officer, if I'm incorrect in this, but as far as I'm aware, on this and in all other issues, the Scottish Conservatives did not come forward with costed proposals about how we would change either our revenue or capital. So I think it's very important to put the context.
Let's hear the Cabinet Secretary.
Clearly the members are not interested in hearing, presiding officer, about how we've taken the decisions over our budget. I would also point out to the member that the UK did not inflation-proof their capital budget, which we forecast will result in nearly a 10% real terms cut in our capital funding. That does mean that difficult decisions will have to be made by this government and, of course, by councils. But also, to be clear, that the Chancellor did in the past say that funding would be made available for the RAAC, not just in housing, but overall. To date, we have had not one single penny from that, and that is a very, very sad state of affairs indeed.
Michael Mara.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In common with other members, I've been contacted by a number of constituents in recent days, obviously, who are consumed with worry about what this means for the home that they've worked so hard to buy, but for the safety of their family as well. What can the Minister tell us about ongoing support for Aberdeen City Council in terms of the dialogue in the longer term for this? And can she tell us, and I think this situation is akin to the cladding issue, that has left many families right across the UK without any value in their homes. And is the Minister determined to take a strategic approach to how we might address this, as these issues might arise in other parts of the country?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Michael Marr is quite right to point out that this may not be the only situation that arises, and it does, of course, affect tenants and private rented sector tenants, and as well as owner-occupiers. And that's exactly why we've put in place, both at ministerial and official level, the discussions we need to have with councils and also across the public sector to be able to determine the scale of the challenge that is coming forward, and also to liaise around good practice, any changes in guidance, for example, to make sure that we are endeavouring to work together as closely as possible on this. And I do take the member's point very seriously about the need to ensure that we don't just focus on tenants, on the work for this issue. Now, from the conversations that the government has been having with the council, it's very clear that they are also looking at everybody that lives there, not just their tenants. And I think that's a very important piece of work. As I say, it's very concerning for everybody involved, including the owner-occupiers, but we will continue those discussions with the council on what is happening in their area, and indeed, of course, with other local authorities as these situations arise.